So this shall be referred to from now on as the 200 rat metaphor. So what it is we open up those doors and 200 rats rush in, and then they realize there's something out those doors, which are open, that they really want. Call it cheese or whatever. And then our job is to not let one of them get through. And it's well, let's call it your job. It's you and 200 rats. So do you think you'd manage to stop all of them before one of them got through? So, just looking at my life experience, practically speaking, no. I don't know how to physically stop 200 scurrying rats going for the cheese at full intensity. So then how do we stop negative thoughts?
We can't allow ourselves the luxury of a negative thought. Does that become a little more apparent to you? Is there a thing in there that says, be careful what you hold in your mind? Hold the pictures in your mind that you want more of. Don't hold the pictures you want less of, because this planet's got a negativity on it, like batteries, where you have a positive and a minus. The soul is the positive point, and the mind, the emotions, the body, the rest of it, they're the negative points. And it goes about 5 to 1, but functions like 25 to 1. One positive thought will take probably 100 million in one day to wipe out a few of your negative ones. Let's start to produce inside of us that statement, I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am happy. I'm a loving, caring person. It's a key statement. One lady teacher told me that one of the first things, hold in your mind the pictures that you want more of, and you're not held accountable for what pictures come to your mind, only which ones you hold there. Very special. I have some very interesting things to share with you tonight. And because they're so interesting, I made myself some notes so I would be sure and not forget them. The first thing I'd like to share with you is food for thought in planning your day. And these are ideas. The greatest sin, fear. The best day, today. The most agreeable companion, one who would not have you any different from what you are. The greatest deceiver, one who deceives himself. The greatest invention of the devil, war. The greatest secret of production, removing waste. The best play, work. The greatest comfort, the knowledge that you have done your work well. The greatest mistake, giving up. The most expensive indulgence, hate. The cheapest, stupidest, and easiest thing, finding fault. The greatest troublemaker, one who talks too much. The greatest stumbling block, egotism. The worst bankrupt, the soul that has lost its enthusiasm. The cleverest man, one who always does what he thinks is right in relationship, in doing what is right. The most dangerous person, the liar. The greatest need, common sense. The greatest puzzle, life. The greatest mystery, death. The greatest thought, God. The greatest thing, bar none in the world, love. Aren't those nice? And I'm going to use all that as probably the theme that I want to talk to you tonight. I've spent a great deal of time in the seminars going over facets of personalities and the dynamics of what you're doing. And many of you now are starting to find out that the teachings are based upon truth. But it only can be truth to you if you work the truth. Some people said, thank God for these teachings because it has helped me over rough spots. But let me tell you, it is the teachings of God. It isn't the teachings of man, and it isn't the teachings of ego. And they work when you give up your process and accept the process of God. Then they work through you automatically, and you can go almost 1,000,000 different places and speak to 1,000,000 different people, and it'll be God speaking through you as you. But don't make the mistake that you're God. That'll be the biggest stumbling block. But God through you or God in you, because that essence is there in all of us. But to claim it as being defined only as yourself, as your form, is the illusion that will make you fall. We teach as the divine medicine for all of the earthly ills, attachment to the sound current, the sound of God. That this is the cure for depression, disease, anxieties. It's the cure for all things. Not necessarily will it make you well in those levels, but it is the cure. Man in the physical body probably has all diseases that anybody could ever have, even though they may not be demonstrating them all the time. We have to then call forward that inside of us that is the divine nature. And it's not just a word level problem where we say, okay, God, there you go. We've heard the thought, let go and let God. And so we say, okay, God, go ahead and clean up the garbage and wash the car, and nothing happens. And so we become disgusted with the nature of life around us because we let go and God didn't do it. Well, that process that is the physical is going to be decided by a physical process. So if it's like take out the garbage, we say, is that physical? And if you say yes, we say then use your physical body. God will use your body to do that. We say, yeah, but that's not fair. That's a cop-out. No, it isn't. That's the truth. That's the truth. You say, well, what I wanted was to have levitation power so I could levitate it out. I say, well, no, that's too far down the line. What you should have done is exercise your godly power so you wouldn't have brought the stuff in to eat it to leave garbage. And then it's out. So you can always go back to first cause instead of going to the effect of everything and then trying to use godly powers to clear up an effect. When we are in these states of effect, like I'm depressed, or I'm sick, or I have anxiety, or I'm broke, we say that is the effect. What is the cause? And we start coming back to first cause all the time. And 9 times out of 10 it's going to be you weren't watching. It's like, but I was watching. We say, well, you were only watching what you wanted to watch instead of watching what was there and what was taking place. And it's really quite simple. It's 2 eyes. I drive with my staff, and I said, how do you think I know that was there? And he said, because you looked down the road and you saw that. And I said, that's right. I just physically looked down there and read the signs. So he decided that he would have to look and read the signs also. But it's interesting, too, that when you're in the driver's seat, you're never going to be quite as fast as a person sitting in the back seat. You never are. Because you also have a mechanical motion going on where the other person only has to have their mind going in their mouth. And sometimes their mouth is mechanical. I agree to that. So we should always give them, enough time to handle those things that are in their level of responsibility. We should do that. And it's every time, almost 100%, we'll be able to see the fault before they can. But when we're in it and we do a fault, we want all sorts of compassion, an understanding of our fault level, and yet we won't give that to someone. We just refuse to give it to them. We take upon us that mantle of teacher, which means, unless we do have that as a spiritual form, we are going to start losing in our spiritual progression. We're going to start losing, not just hesitating, but losing, because we are then taking their karma upon ourselves, and we do not have the ability to work it out. Each person has the ability to work their own karma. And part of our job is to have enough patience with them so they can do that. And I've talked about this level, the two things we need is patience and relax. Patience and relax. And we say, well, I'd like to be patient and relaxed, but my boss did such and such. And we say, you could have stopped your boss right at the moment they started that by saying, look, I can't do that. We call that asserting of yourself. Just assert yourself to let them know. And often we think, well, if I let them know, they'll find out that I'm not capable and I can't do it. And they're going to find out anyway. Because if it's true that you're not capable and you can't do it, after you accept the job, that'll manifest itself as not doing and the incapableness. So they're going to find out. If you tell them in the beginning, you may keep them guessing for 2 more days. They may back it off and say, well, that's right. Maybe you can't handle that. And everyone is seeking for that thing in the physical world that will secure them. And there is just no security here. There's temporary satiation where we are temporarily satisfied. But people have said to me, well, John Roger, if I could make just $5 more a day, I could get out of debt. And I start laughing. Because you'll just go in debt $6 more. Or maybe you'll be smart and do it 10. One person told me a long time ago, they said, I'm $50,000 in debt. They said, I must be wealthy. And I thought about that for a few blocks. We were driving in the car, and I said, yes, you probably are wealthy, but I don't think they're very rich, because they have to pay that back. Now, it'd been nice. I thought they were really rich and wealthy if they didn't have to pay that back. Then I said, oh yeah, fine, that's fine. But you have to pay. And somebody's going to be coming after you one way or another to get what they feel is theirs, their pound of flesh. The only way we're going to get out of that is to get off the planet. And as long as we're going to be here, those exchanges are going to go on. I've read reports of people that have won tremendous sums of money in lotteries and in races, like the Irish sweepstakes. And they get so happy having won something that they become ecstatic. And then in comes the IRS and says, this amount goes to us. And then in comes all the neighbors and all the other people. And then in comes all the salesmen. And then in comes all the people writing for their favorite charity. That by the time you get to answering and handling all that, you say, what a curse. What a curse. And it can get to be that way. And we seem to think that our success in this level is to pile up physical materiality. It's not success. It becomes a hassle. The wealth of your consciousness, your own richness, isn't what you have, it's what you can do without. There's where you start to find the wealth inside of you. Must I have this? Or can I move? Or can I go to something lesser? Well, we say, well, I'm spoiled. It's like, sure, that all goes with this level too. And the end result of being spoiled is rotten. So when something starts to smell, check your rotten levels. You may find something there. The cure then for all these ails is what we call the Word, the sound of God. And when we start doing meditation, is what we'll refer to it here, the Simran, and we start moving in to our levels of awareness, we come to the level of 1,000 lights, which is a process of the astral light and the emotional light and the mental light and all those mental ideas that seem to light us up. And we see those inside of us. And it has various configurations. And often we have forgotten many of those configurations. And when they come back, we get all enthused again, like, oh, gee, this person's coming back in my life again. It's like, maybe it wouldn't be wise to have them back in your life again like they were before, because look what it's put you through. And it might be nice if you were through that, but look what you're in. You know, people write me letters and they say, oh, John Roger, I'm living with such and such a person, and they're not working, and I have to supply all the wherewithal. And they tell me they're going to work, and they keep telling me they have a job interview next Monday. And this has been 3 years now. What am I to do? Of course, we all have the answer, don't we? It's called dummy. But then, see, the question is that you would ask them is, why are you and were you hanging on to those people for so long? Why? And the answer is, well, if they got a job, they'd bring in money, and then I could have the things that I think I should have. And what we're saying is their lust is defeating them. Their avarice, their greed. They're being defeated. You might say, well, how long should you give that person? And the answer is quite simple. How long do you love them? And how much? And how deeply? And what is your karma? It's like, my karma's hell. Like, how do you change that to heaven? Oh, I don't know. I'm always thinking about them out doing other things. It's like, that's right, you're out there. And I'm thinking of all those things out there that I can't get because I have to give them money for their things. And so we become caught up in the object of our senses. And the object of our senses is a process of our emotions. And the process of the emotions is the attachment to the mind. And the mind is ruling the kingdom. And then we say, stinking thinking is taking place. So how do we then overcome that? Well, one, you can be very ruthless. You can say, get out, leave, go away, don't come back until you bring the check. The other one is to set a deadline. You know, the procrastinators don't like deadlines. And the deadline is in 3 weeks. If you don't have a job, goodbye. And they say, well, what if in 3 weeks I get a job interview for the 4th week? It's like, go live with your mother until you get the job. And it gets to be hard, doesn't it? It's like, well, I can't do that. It's like, why can't you do that? Why can't you do that? And they say, well, I love the person. We say, then why do you entertain these other ideas? If you love them, why do you entertain that? It's like, well, yeah, but I love them, but. It's like, let's look at the but, because that's the problem area. Well, they don't do this and they don't do that. Upon whose level of accomplishment are we looking at it? Upon yours. So you're judging the very essence of what they're doing. And as you judge it, you eat it. You know, they say man will be punished for his sins. That's not true. Man's sins will punish him. And you don't have to die to get the punishment. You can start getting it right here. You get a lot of lust going and it beats you right in the head. Yeah, procrastination is also a sin. It's not quite deadly. But often you feel like you're dying. Dying would be no punishment. You'd be out of it. but you have to be punished by that. That good idea, if it's not correct and proper, will punish you. Have you noticed that, friends? It'll do it to you. The lust punishes you, not after you've had what you've lusted after. You're over that. But that produces the next sin, the lust. And that lust beats you in the head until you can release it, relieve it. That's no sin, that's fun. It's a release. But that then starts the habit patterns rolling in the consciousness. So even then, when you're not thinking of lust, lust sits there and beats you in the head, and your sins are on you. And it could be avarice, greed, lust, lying, stealing. It doesn't matter. Those processes will still appear on you as you, beating you, and the inability to change is your karma. And it sits there. And that's what makes it hard, is like, yeah, it sits there. And every time I go to get up, it's such a heavy load. So we find that a lot of our illnesses are what we would term, psychosomatic. Psychosomatic would say, wrong thinking, wrong feeling produces wrong results in the body. And if you get caught up in a karmic play with somebody, you get theirs also. And if you're not equipped to handle it, it can beat you. Now, a lot of people say, well, how do I know if something that comes my way is karmic, like an illness, and I can't do anything about it, or I can do something about it? And we say, well, you don't have to endure it if you can cure it. And they say, well, how do I do that? We say, you go to a doctor, and he will diagnose, hopefully correct. Hopefully. And if he does, then he will give you the medicine. And that's going to produce a lot of things. One, your friends will stop harping at you to go see a doctor. And that can be nice. So that gets them off your back. And two, you're going to feel better that you know what it is. Even if it's something bad, if you don't know what it is, that's worse than what it is. Once we know, we think, okay, maybe I can handle that. And the third thing is, like, the doctors give me something that will bring me into health, into balance, and I will feel better. And if you can produce those things and you can get rid of it, then you have overcome that karma. And if you can't, then that karma is called fate karma. And you must fulfill it. And it could take you this entire life. We say, well, God, how do I handle that? Well, you do meditation, simram, you go back in by repeating the tones of God. And you come to that level where you hear the sound. You hear it in the right ear or the center. And sometimes a good way to practice is to close the ears so that you can not be distracted, or get earplugs. The best way is to so draw your attention, the surat, so that you focus into the attention, and then let the attention listen to the sound. And the attention will listen, and it will hear. And usually we will hear it above the third eye area. If we hear it in the left ear, the call forces have got you going. And if you hear it in the right ear or the center, then you're listening to the positive sound. And sometimes you have to take your finger out of your left ear so you stop hearing it out of that side, so you can listen to it in the right side. And those are physical things that will help. But the best way is to draw that attention up so that you listen to that sound. And once you catch the sound, if you can hear the bell sound, you don't chase after it, because your mind will scatter it. And then you won't know what you're listening to. Or if you can catch the sound of, like, a train going across a track, a trestle, has a rumbling sound. This will let you know that you're doing okay. But as you get above that area and you start hearing, then you're above your fate karma. And you see it for what it is from the very beginning of dispensation to the very end of it. And in that moment, you find out that you're above it and it has no effect upon you, even though you still may not have a leg, or you still might not have an arm. Your attitude then is clear. And at that point, the sound just keeps pulling you right up. There are problems that can appear. and listening to the sound current. If you're doing it in a cross-legged position, the calf of the leg and the thigh, they'll just start really screaming at you. And the attention will be aware of that. And if your attention drops to that, you've dropped out of practicing the Simram. The best thing to do is to uncross your legs and massage the calf, get up and walk around, because you're going to just keep focusing back to that. That's the physical world. Also, the back, as the energy comes up out of the spine, as this spiritual energy is drawn up, you'll feel the blocks in the spine where you'll feel like, oh, through my neck or my shoulders or down through my hip, and you'll want to move to release that. My suggestion to you is don't pay any attention to that. And often when it comes up past the heart, there will be like a pressure that we could call pain that will appear in the heart area. And often we think, oh, we're having a heart attack. Now, if you really feel concerned about having that heart attack, go see your doctor. Right? Go see him. If you really feel concerned about that spine, go see your doctor. You know, let them line it up for you, tell you everything's okay. Because the blocks we're dealing with may not be what we would call physical manifestation blocks. They are just energies that appear in those areas. So often people will go to a doctor and they'll say, oh, this thing in my heart or my throat feels all pinched and congested. And the doctor looks and looks and looks. He says, I can't find anything wrong with you. You better go see the psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist goes and he looks and looks and he says, I don't know, maybe we better go into psychotherapy. And then 4 years later, you finally get past that because you stop focusing the attention to it. And as you lift up, the teeth will ache, the gums will hurt, and you think, oh, I better go see my dentist, my teeth are falling out. And you will actually have dreams of teeth falling out. And they'll come up on the nose, and you'll find the sinuses will congest and then go down, and it's like soap suds breaking in them. And sometimes they'll get really pressured. And it's like, if this is a manifestation physically of sinus problem, go see your doctor. Don't write me letters saying, my sinus pressure spiritual, or is it not? Go check with your doctor. If in doubt, go check with them. You think, well, I'll write it through. That's fine. Just because I don't say anything doesn't mean I agree with you that it's spiritual. I just won't say anything to you at all. Why? That's part of the karma in these levels of getting our attention up high enough where we can override that. And when we get up at the eye area, oh, the eyes will feel like sand in them and they'll burn, and we have the eye difficulties, and we think, gee, I'll need glasses. It's like, go check with the eye doctor and see if you need glasses. But I also tell people, try the Bates eye exercises. Maybe you'll find the solution there. And a lot of people say, I didn't. It's still there. Is it bad? It's like, I don't know, it's your eyes. You know, some people say, well, gee, I can't read. We say, well, the type of job you have, you don't read anyway. We say, oh, okay. So in other words, don't focus on to a problem area and make it something that you're not going to be using anyway. They say, well, gee, I can't look at the sun as much as I used to. It's like, that's okay. There's no problem. Just don't look at the sun. Look at the moon. In other words, there is a practicalness about all of this. I like the people who write to me letters and they say, you know, they present all the questions. They say, well, I'll assume if I don't hear from you that these are physical things for me to take care of. And I just write on the envelope, file. And that's right. But I hope you keep a copy of your letter so when I don't answer it in 6 or 7 months, you will have gone and taken care of all of that. Because my letters that I get aren't getting less. They're getting more. I hope this thing doesn't go into some sort of algebraic equation. Because it'll just get too... I'll start wearing glasses. That'll be funny, won't it? I will just read it when you write it, and then you can burn it, and you don't have to mail it, and save 13 cents. And if it's important, I'll write back to you, and then you can get it that way. Also, when we start coming up and these energies pull from the body, we'll get headaches, and the headaches will appear in the cranium along the side and the back here. The headaches will appear there. Often, now again, you could have subluxations, misalignments. The atlas could be tilted. There could be a lot of things there. Maybe you're sleeping wrong on your pillow. Maybe you're lying in bed too long watching TV with your head propped funny. Which, by the way, makes for a double chin. You should, practice sitting up so you don't get it. That's if you're concerned about it. Now, some of you beauties, you have to be concerned about that. And the rest of us who are in God consciousness, who cares? So everybody says, I'm in God consciousness. Don't kid yourself. One who kids himself, they're really shooting themselves out of the saddle. Also, we will find that various parts of the head will get hot. We'll get hot spots. And they'll get soft spots in there too. Now, a lot of these are centers of the body for, we call them meridian or alignment centers or energy flow centers. So it's like, check that out to make sure that that's okay. And there are a lot of people in the movement who have the ability and that expertise to check it out for you, hopefully to your content, but probably not. I haven't found anybody who's gone to a doctor that's contented yet. It's like they want to go through one door and out the other and be well. It's like, let's go ahead and do that. That's fine. But don't think the doctor's going to do it if you've made physical karma for yourself. They're going to assist you, comfort you, talk to you, get you going, hopefully, on a right path for you. And hopefully you'll have enough wit to follow it through. People get into a spiritual movement like this and they don't want to take medicines. It's like, don't be dumb. Sometimes that's the way to offset that karma immediately. And then when they get, instead of a little lung congestion, they end up with pneumonia or walking pneumonia, and they write to me, it's like, why didn't you take the antibiotic the doctor prescribed for you? I mean, what can I do now with this effect? You've got to eat it. Go now and do what the doctor said to do. Go and do that, and that'll help that. And once you set that in motion, I'll see what I can do to increase the energy flow. But you've got to go through those processes in this physical world because that's the karma. No one's going to be exempt from it. I know a lot of people that call upon certain gods' names for extension of grace, and they really feel great, like I have the grace of this God in me, and it's like, that's fine, and they still have to go have that ingrown toenail fixed because that's the karma. And there's the good feeling, the good attitude's nice, but if you're going to have that fixed, you better go get it done because it's a physical world thing. You understand what I'm trying to give you here? There's a practicalness. It's practical spirituality. Check all the physical things first if you have some symptom of a disease. Always check all of them first. And once that comes up to nothing, then start looking to the next level to see what karmic release you're dealing with. But it's much easier, much simpler for you to go check it out physically than to try to go in and focus on a physical disturbance inside of you, get the alignment, release it, when you should be in there meditating on the upward flow to God. Really, don't waste your time trying to align the body chakra centers because they're going to keep going out unless those upper chakra centers and the spiritual bodies are aligned. You're just going to keep wasting the time to go in there and play with the energy fields. And it's play. The only energy that will be worthwhile will be that energy that is God, as the pure form. These other energies are to assist, they're to help you, but they're not by any means the end result. No way. When we are in these levels and we have the attention focused, we lose contact with the physical body and the world it's in. And for a while, our mind scatters in doing the Simram, the spiritual exercise. And then to become disturbed about the mind scattering, scatters it more. And then to be concerned about that makes you feel guilty. Then you got the guilt, and there's some new karma for you. Now we're into daily karma. So if by chance you were to work out your fate karma, if by chance you were, and if by chance you were to work out your daily karma, there's always the reserve karma. So never feel lonely, that you're not going to have karmic companionship. It's like, but who will it be? It doesn't have to be anybody. What will it be? It doesn't have to be a what. How will it manifest? You'll know it when you get there. Never be anxious to take on the karma of the world, nor anybody else in the world. Don't be anxious. If it comes your lot to do that, and you'll know, spiritually you'll know, then you do it. And you live above that in the soul. And you just keep walking the body through it, walking the body through it. And at some point, it will get tired because you're not focusing upon it, the illness, to keep it there, and it will start draining out through the natural healing patterns of the body. Often, once you learn how to self-heal, if you do it too fast, that disease, that karma will go right back out to those people that you took it from, and they'll say, well, I was good for 2 days, but it's back again. So what we're looking for is that permanence of healing. And often the one who takes that on them must keep it for long periods of time until the other person overcomes the law of return, where things will just keep cycling back through you, cycling back through you. The law of reversibility is what we have termed it. And we have to get over the cell levels reaching out for that to like bring it back in again, because we use that as a crutch to make our husband or our wife or our children get in line. And so we will start pulling that back in again to create it so we can use it for someone. So I say, don't be anxious to alleviate somebody's karma. But you can suggest methods and help them see what's going on so that they might be able to lift above this. When we go inside, we do hear voices, and those voices come from 2 different locations. One of the locations is what we call Raymond, or the merciful God, and the other one we call the call, or negative power. And we say, well, how will I know the difference? If you're initiate, you just start chanting your tone, and you challenge them. And if they're not of the positive power, they can't hold up. They start leaving. If it's a physical form, you can see pretty fast who it is. Because the traveler, when they appears, the other form has to go, can't stay. But you know, when the Kal and the Maya, who created this earth, the Father and the Mother God, negativity and illusion, when they set up this whole pattern, they asked for 3 things that what they refer to as the saints or the travelers could not do. And this was granted to them. And one of the things that was granted to them is that the travelers would do no outward miracles or supernatural manifestations. There have been a few that were given leave to do it because of a dispensation in time. And when they did this, it was very hard to control the masses. They would all rush towards them, and it caused feelings of anarchy and tribulation. And so a lot of them were stoned to death and killed. But those who are of the negative power aren't bound by that. They can do manifestations of miracles. And when you follow a negative power and you bow down to it, you get to return. And that return is what we call reincarnation. But the call power will come in between your mind and the soul and give you the impression that you're disconnected from the sound of God. If you're initiate, you don't even have to worry about it. Don't even be concerned. If you're disconnected, I'll write you a letter and tell you. So in a sense, the word no news is good news. But that doesn't mean that you won't have that feeling of being disconnected. And it will be very strong, and you'll be almost sure, and you'll be chanting your tone, it won't seem to work. Well, it doesn't work in those levels. The call works in those levels. It works in the soul levels. So it's really important to keep in mind that if you're going to be involved in spiritual things, that you find out what the positive is and be aware of what the negative is. You don't necessarily have to find out what it is. The fate actions, the fate karma that we have is stored in the 8-petaled lotus. So when we're meditating, we have to get up above the 8-petaled lotus in order to see what that karma is to disperse it. And that takes an awful lot of meditating, an awful lot. But it is the cure for karma. It's the cure. It's not just a temporary manifestation. It is a cure, a permanent release from that area that binds the person. But only when we have crossed the third mind area, the level of the third mind, are we really karmically free. And the three levels of the mind are pretty easy. We have the physical, which deals with the physical forms and the senses. And then we have what's known as the universal mind. And this deals with the religions, heavens and hells. And then we have the causal mind, and this goes to the top of the Brahm mind. And from there up, well, you're not even protected there. You have to get up to the Par Brahm. You have to get above that. And at that point, you have protection of the sound current of your own soul. But prior to that, the soul is always in bondage to the mind and the emotions. And the bondage is very good. Most people that come into the movement in the seminars are getting right along in their spiritual evolution. They're moving right up there. And because of this, they have many more karmic pacts that they've made with various people, like we'll be together till we die, or I'll never leave you approach, or oh gee, I want this job, or some prayer like that, where we ask for physical things in the physical world. And if we get them, it will delay our spiritual progression. That's why I tell people, don't pray for physical things. If anything, pray for understanding of what it is. And that's not a physical thing. It's spiritual. When you come into the seminars, there are 3 actions that most of the travelers have used since time began to increase a person's spiritual awareness. One would be discourses that you can read in your spare time. Another one is satsang, like this, where the karma is released and pulled up through energy patterns. Another one is if those 2 don't work, then the person has adversity placed upon them. And that adversity is losing a job, losing a husband, losing a wife, disease. So that they'll turn from that into God. And of course, the last one is if that don't work, then they just give you a rebirth again. And you get enough of those, you're bound to start listening to somebody. And there's an old saying, enough is enough. And somebody asked me, when's that? And I said, when it's enough. And it's one of those things where you can't really describe it to a person. It's one of those intangibles. It's like cutting open a body and trying to find humor in there. Or depression. It's like, well, it's not located quite in those particular levels. We must be careful that the action we're dealing with is not the important thing, but it's the motive in the action. Because we've usually spent many hours, thinking about this and feeling about it. And so we've built up a tremendous energy. And then when we do that action we do, the action then has usually quite definite repercussions, like quitting a job or getting a divorce or getting married or going to have a child. We spend a lot of time in that. And it would be amazing to you if you could keep track of the hours you spend haranguing yourself over things of the world. If you could spend that much time in spiritual work, you'd be off the planet. Because it'll come in and come in and come in and come in. And even in the moment of laughing, the thing sits underneath there and you still feel it. And that gets to be very difficult. The thing, too, is that we must remember is that a person really can't be initiated to the sound current without payment of karmic debt. Now, you may say, well, how does grace fit into this? Those first 2 years that a person is consciously in the movement, they start paying off an awful lot of karmic things, an awful lot. And the way we help run that is that the offset with that is ambition. We keep their ambition up. so that they just keep right on going. About the time they get to 2 years, they're looking forward to initiation. And one of the things that I like people to be aware of is that the energy drains in our body will drain out through the 2 lowest cavities, which we call elimination and reproductive organs. This is our energy drain. If we abuse the energy in those levels, it's leakage. The energy just starts leaking right out. And it can leak out through emotionalizing things, dealing with the lower chakra centers, or fantasizing them. And the leakage doesn't take much in order for it to dissipate the energy. Unless you've really been involved in spiritual exercises and you really build up this reservoir of energy inside of you. That energy is being built up so that you can use it to catapult out. So just about the time you're ready to go out of the body, you go and release it sexually, and the energy just drains right out. Then it's like, oh God. And usually people start feeling depressed, they start feeling irritated, anxious, like that wasn't it. It's like, yeah, most of the time it's all the thoughts and the feelings you've had towards it. It in itself, over pretty fast. What happens though is it centers you enough into the here and now that you start realizing what you've been doing. And that realization then brings about the punishment by your own sin, which is your greed or your lust. Then it starts beating you in the head until you forget about that because you start building up the energy again. Before you know it, you go and trip the valve and away you go again. Then you say, what's happening to me? And I start laughing. It's like you're wasting your energy. You're wasting your energy. And believe me, the easiest and the fastest way to release it is through masturbation. Easiest and the fastest. And you really should be saving and containing that seed energy inside of you to pull it up inside of you. You might say, well, yeah, but it builds up so much inside of me, this energy, that I just got to release it. It's like, sure, we understand the frailties, the shortcomings of the human form. We understand that. But disregarding that, you still can't give in to that. And if you're married and you're still masturbating, then you really got yourself pegged to a negative spot. That release should be into the other physical form. And hopefully it'll be recycled back to you through tender loving care and through emotional balancing. And if it's not, you're in difficulty. And it doesn't matter how long you want to kid yourself. It isn't going to take place. Well, a lot of people say, well, I can't have sexual fulfillment. So? What's so big about sexual fulfillment? It's nothing compared to spiritual fulfillment. Absolutely nothing. When we enter into life, we pray to God for some form of recognition that God is there. Like, God, are you there? But we have to shut up long enough to hear what God's going to say. I mean, really. And so we have to shut our mouth and shut the ears and go in and listen. But if we've set up the chattering of our own mind and our own imagination, then that's what we start hearing. And then we think that's what it is. And we start taking that as divine guidance. And it's not. And it becomes very difficult then to know what is right and what is wrong coming out of that inner part of you. It's like, well, what do I follow? Well, do you know what lust is? Yes. Do you know what it does to you? Yes. Do you like it? No. Don't follow that. It's like, well, that's practical. It sure is. It's practical. But it's interesting that there are signs of God's mercy that are given to us on the planet. And once we locate those signs, we can actually have quite a joyful experience, except for one thing. that's still under the influence of the negative power and the illusion. So after it's all done, we say, yeah, but did that apply to me? And there sits the big, million-dollar question. It's like, did you apply it to you? It's like, well, no, then it didn't apply. They say, well, I'll apply it, then it will apply. It's like, well, gee, I looks like I'm doing it. That's right. Until you get to a certain stage, it gets to be trial and tribulation. But one of the signs of God's mercy is we become dissatisfied with the worldly routine. And we start longing and seeking for truth. And that dissatisfaction brings about dissatisfaction with a wife or a husband, and a job or a car or clothing or the food. And the things you thought you could never do without, you become dissatisfied with them. And you start asking yourself, how does this bring me to God? How does this bring me truth? How does this set me free? It's like, get a new car. It's like, it won't set me free. I have to pay for it. That's right. Get yourself a new wife. It'll be the same as the first wife. That's right. Have another child. I got 15 already. That's right. Also, one of these signs of God's mercy is they bring this person to the mystical traveler. They're brought in. And another sign of that is that the mystical traveler gives a secret of initiation and stirs the sound and places a connection. And at this time of that second initiation is when the traveler opens up the inner mind of the aspirant and places the form of the traveler inside so that they can see it. It's a radiant form. Prior to that, it comes in and out and in and out as it's being worked in terms of their worldly karma. And then we come to the fourth stage of this sign of God's mercy. And it's at this time of initiation we truly start our spiritual progression. We truly start in it. Up to that time, we've read books and we've played the games, but we have not had the experience of transcendental consciousness. We have not had that experience that the dreams are no longer dreams. That at some point in that 2-year period, your life has gone from those dreams of former existence in the physical world, and you start paying attention to the dreams, and then you take initiation, and those dreams in the meantime have shifted from that illusion into that reality. And that reality transcends what you could possibly know out of your own mind in any type of dream state. And prior to that, the dreams are used to work your karma loose. And after that, it's not used that way as much, except if you sleep and your consciousness drops down into your throat. And then at that point, you just work out your own karma in the dream state inside of you. But once you maintain that awareness and you transcend the barrier of sleep, then you're consciously becoming a co-creator. It's a slow path in terms of a person's projected ambitions, but it's a sure path. A sure path. Does that mean 100%? You're going to do 100%. It's like, no, it's not 100%. They say, well, if I do 100%, it's like, it'll be 100%. And again, you're a tremendous working part of this. But you see, a person will place a lot of demands against the inward one who can travel time and space and demand them into this world. And this world belongs to the negative power. You want something in this world? Pray to the called power. If you're initiate, you get it fast. But at that point, you may find out that all the things around you start crumbling and falling away, and you wonder why. It's like, well, if you're going to live in negativity, then you must be responsible for that. And if you're going to live in the positive expression, then you get to be responsible for that. Hey, if you're going to be responsible, if negative is crying and positive is laughing, and you got to do it one way or another, what would you choose? Well, there should be a third choice, which is neutral, that the positive and the negative are looked at equally. as being the same thing. And you actually, when you start lifting up higher in consciousness, you stop having the emotions that you had before. You find out that that emotional ecstasy and then that tremendous emotional despair aren't this way as they balance out this way, and you go from one end to another in a horizontal instead of a perpendicular. And so people say, my highs of years ago are my today's lows. It's like, that's nice, but what are you bragging about? Because now you're going to have to go down and see what they were all about. It's best to say, oh, right, okay, next. And to not give of your spirit into the lower levels. And we can give into it by overenthusiasm. I mean, we can laugh so hard we start coughing. Then we cough so hard we rupture a disc in our back. Then we got to go see a doctor, and then they operate and we're laid low for months. It's like all from a laugh. It's like, no, all from an out of balance situation. And so we do come to a key word, and that is moderation. Now, it's interesting to me that in the presence of these 4 signs of God's mercy, how you can feel dissatisfied or disgusted with yourself. All you have to do is apply yourself. We've heard that, haven't we? You must apply yourself. And we think, well, I don't want to get up and dig the ditch. Well, then apply yourself to get somebody else to dig the ditch. And if you can get them to do it for you, and they feel good about that, and everything is balanced, go ahead and do that. And if you can't, and the ditch must be dug, then what is your choice? It's like, well, I don't have any choice. No, the choice is always there, that we go on. Those who are functioning within the movement and their own spiritual inner awareness are going to be guiding lights to many people on this planet. But there's the guiding physical light, really a lot of sexual voluptuousness. Then there's the astral light of creating things out of the imagination. Then there's the emotional, and then the mental, and the etheric, it's just more unconscious. But those are just what we call the blue center when you cross from the Nil chakra, N-I-L. And you cross that, a lot of people think that is the pearl, the blue pearl of existence. And it's not. It's still a lower level consciousness. But it will consume itself in such a way that you will think that it's God, because it will flame on you. And that flaming action will start the purification. We must continue on. And even though we have an experience with the traveler in the nighttime, and many people are having this now while they're awake walking around, it isn't like, oh boy, that was so good last night. It's like, okay, what's going on now? What's the now? And if we're so busy feeling good, the ecstasy of meeting with the traveler last night in what we call the dream state, and we're so ecstatically caught up in that, then a week goes by of us looking back into that, and then another week goes by and we look at the week we did nothing. And then we start to feel very bad again. And we start to feel down. And it's like, but why did you keep looking back over a week or 2 weeks? Why didn't you just say, that was last night? And use that energy to get up today and use today. This is a very simple process. Yesterday, we can do nothing about that. Today is the day God has created. Yesterday is the day we're creating. And next week is the time we're creating. But today is the days God has created. So then you have to ask yourself, whose time are you going to live in? God's time or some illusionary time? And it's not like, well, I got this deal, it's going to come due in 3 weeks. It's like, what happened to a lot of the deals that were supposed to come due? Oh, they fell through. It's like, don't forget that. But what did you do all that 3 weeks waiting for the deal? I did nothing because I kept living in that. It's like, now you got 3 weeks of fallow time. You did nothing. People say, well, I think I've got this job. Should I take it? And I say, well, when do you think you'll get it? They say 3 weeks. I say, go after another one tomorrow. Go out today and get another one. Get a job for 3 weeks till that one comes in. Or get one for 6 weeks and forget about that one. They say, well, but it's a good one. It's like, watch out, your greed is going to destroy you. Take what is present. It's there. It is God's mercy extended to you. And usually it's karmically free. Berush Beshem.